Welcome into the PFF NFL Daily. Today discussing defensive players because, the draft boards, they're all in. But Sam, let's go through not our top five at a certain position. Let's just go defensive side of the ball. So you and I can go back and forth with our top five defensive players. So let's get into it. The best defensive players in the 2022 NFL Draft. Do you want to go first with the top five? We'll go back and forth here.
Which way are we going? We going 5-1 or 1-5?
Let's go 5-1. Make people stick around for number one. Who's your number five, top five defensive player?
Derek Stingley, cornerback from LSU. Look, I think Derek Stingley's potential is sky high. I think if you get 2019 Derek Stingley, you've got arguably one of the best players in the entire draft, regardless of position. But I think the risk attached to that is significant, and it's enough to drag him down draft boards. It's enough to drag him down a top five defensive players in my eyes. I think there's enough to be concerned about in terms of injuries, in terms of just being a couple of years since we've seen that I wouldn't put him at the very top of draft boards that, if we'd had multiple years of that kind of play, he would be.
Spoiler alert. I have him much higher. I do buy into Stingley. I'll talk more when I get to him. My number five player, though, Kayvon Thibodeaux from Oregon, the edge defender, the guy that was supposed to go number one about a year ago at this time, if no quarterback emerged. Thibodeaux fell, from being number one, I think with good reason, because he isn't one of those elite prospects, but still a very good all-around edge defender. I don't know enough about the off-field stuff that's come up about love and football and everything. All I do know, he has the juice to rush the passer. Our friend Nate Tice on our comp show comped him to the freak, Javon Curse. And look, that doesn't mean we're equating them, just comping them. But that gets in your head just a little bit. I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. That is good. Kayvon Thibodeaux, good athlete, can rush the passer, pretty good against the run. I think he plays hard enough. So I got Thibodeaux at number five. All right, who's your four?
For Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle from Georgia.
Wow.
Wyatt's the guy that's getting overlooked across this entire process. We're focusing on, what could Jordan Davis become, or what could Trayvon Walker become? Devontae Wyatt was the best player in that front seven of the draft eligible players. I think, arguably Jalen Carter inside is a better player overall, maybe for next year's draft. But of the guys that we're talking about this year, Devontae Wyatt was the best guy by a pretty decent margin. Like, he has everything you want from a modern day prototypical three technique type of pass rusher. He's got enough size. He's got quickness. He's got speed. He dominated at the Senior Bowl. He was a wrecking machine. I'm not sure why in a year where there aren't a ton of quality interior defensive linemen, again, we're not talking about Devontae Wyatt more positively.
Yeah, Wyatt's fantastic. I like him a lot. He would make my top 10, certainly, Sam. Not my top five, but I do like Wyatt. Probably the best interior defensive lineman in this draft, him and Jordan Davis, his teammate. But Wyatt does fit the NFL a little bit better, penetrating style that he has. My number four, though, I'm going Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame. The safety, maybe I've soured on him a touch, but I don't know if that's fair. I don't know if I should have soured on him. I think I just maybe came to my senses that the safety position in general is a little bit more risky. But I think to rank in the top five defensive players as a safety is still extremely good, right? I mean, there was a point where Hamilton was being mocked to the Lions at number two, and I think it was because of a lack of options. But Hamilton has modern day range, size, the ability to cover the slot in a zone-heavy scheme, play two high, play single high, be your, all-around lurk player in the middle of the field. I love what Hamilton brings to the table. Look, there could be some good years. There could be some average years in there, but he's going to have one of those years where he picks off 8 passes and is an absolute game changer. I love what Kyle Hamilton can do at 6'4", with really good movement skills despite some subpar 40 times.
Yeah, I have Hamilton at number 3. So he's the next guy up on my board for the same reasons. Look, I think he does have everything you want from a modern day safety. As I think Mike Renner was pointing out, he also, at his size, over 215, 220 pounds, you could be talking about a guy who plays dime linebacker as well. Like, he can play anywhere essentially in the middle of the field in coverage across all 3 downs. So he is the guy that you want to build the back end of a defense around. And he's shown, regardless of those 40 times, more than enough range and instinct and playmaking ability that I think you just have to throw it out and say, I don't care what the 40 time is.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised at myself for not giving him the tight end eraser label that I give other players, just because he didn't do that a whole lot in college and he's more than that. But man, I mean, if you want to man him up against the tight end. He has those skills as well. Let's go to my number 3 now. Sauce Gardner, the cornerback out of Cincinnati. There are rumors that he might go number 3 overall to the Houston Texans. I think, there's debate about Sauce and Derek Stingley as the top corner in the draft, but I think Gardner, for me, with the size, the length, I just called him a nuisance at the catch point, right? He is making sure that receivers are having a difficult time catching the ball. I think Gardner is an excellent zone player. I think he's got great feel, seeing the ball, breaking on it, production. And then even though he looks weird running, right? It looks labored running, he's fast, right? So I like a lot of what Sauce Gardner brings to the table. And then positional value, too, at corner, bumped him up just a touch. Plus the model likes him, Sam. The model, my model, of course, loves him.
He is a very weird player. Forget the sort of just the size and length and the shape of him. Like very odd way of moving as well. But yeah, he is really good. And I think, as you said, he is a really good zone player. I think he gets a little bit miscast as this prototypical press man type of corner because of that length and that skill set. But I think he's a better player in zone, and that makes him a fit for more teams in the NFL. Before you would look at it and say, well, he's a perfect fit for these man-heavy teams, of which there are fewer than ever before. But all of a sudden, I think if you accept that he is really good as a zone player, that opens up where he could go to any team in the NFL. Number 2 for me, I think Kayvon Thibodeau is the second best player in this draft. Whatever about the off-field stuff, how much does he love football? How much is he too invested in the cryptocurrency and whatever else? He's the guy that when you go back to the tape every time, it reminds you, sometimes you get these immediate visceral reactions to how a player looks on tape. And sometimes you need to keep going back to that and remind yourself what it looks like, because we're spending the last couple of weeks talking ourselves into reasons that Trayvon Walker is better than his tape, essentially. Guy's got incredible workout numbers, the athleticism, the strength, the power. Let's go and find the tape that backs that up, because the combine said he's incredible. So we need to find justification for that. Thibodeau, it's almost like the opposite. With all the negativity swirling around him, it's like you get sort of poisoned, but then you go back to the tape and you're like, dude, this guy is way better than Trayvon Walker. His burst, he's so twitchy. He's got lateral agility. He's just a much better pass rusher, regardless of role and how they're being deployed and stuff. I think he's a guy that people are just not going back to the tape enough on over the last few weeks and reminding themselves just how freaking good Kayvon Thibodeau is.
That's the interesting thing about this draft, Sam, is maybe you don't have to force. Look, Trayvon Walker could end up becoming a great player, the next JPP, whatever you want to compare him to, Danielle Hunter. But you could have a player that you might think is lesser, a Thibodeau or a Hutchinson, if you think they're less than Trayvon Walker, but there's probably not a big difference between them. So I have Thibodeau at 5. You have him at 2. My number 2 is your number 5, though. You had Derek Stingley at 5. He's my second player on my defensive player board. I've come full circle here. Look, he looked like a Jalen Ramsey level prospect as a true freshman. I know it's not common to say, well, look at 3 years ago. That's what people tried to do with Christian Hackenberg. They tried to do that, but it was different. Because Stingley, when you looked back 3 years, it was the best cornerback season we've ever graded here at PFF. And he made it look easy, too. He's breaking up passes like, oh, yeah. He just didn't look like a true freshman. He looked like an NFL cornerback as a true freshman. And maybe I'm just the Kool-Aid drinker during draft week, but all the reports coming out that Stingley at LSU playing hurt the last couple of years, everybody's going to bat for him, saying that wasn't the real him. He wanted to play through injury. I'm back on the Derek Stingley bandwagon as cornerback 1, Sauce Gardner just behind him, and I think the potential is just through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think if you're drafting Derek Stingley, it's because of the potential and the projection and what we think he can be. And it's based on evidence. We've seen him be that player. It's just been a while ago. So I think there is a range of perfectly acceptable places to rank Derek Stingley where you're not crazy if you put him 2. I mean, you're not crazy if you put him 1 in this particular draft. And I think you can extend that all the way to 15. You can have him ranked pretty low depending on how scared away you are of the injuries and the fact that we haven't seen that tape for a couple of years.
All right, who's your number 1 defensive player here in the draft?
It's Hutchinson. And look, I don't.
You sound upset.
Well, this is not the best draft in the world in terms of top 10 elite prospects, right? So we're not putting Aiden Hutchinson in the category of the Myles Garretts of the world, even the Joey Bosa's of the world. He isn't that good. but he's still good. He's still very good. And he's still, I think, the best defensive player in this draft. So it's tough because I don't think in any normal year he would go number one overall. But this particular year where there's a complete absence of like that caliber player, generally the strength of this draft is draft picks like 10 through 60. It's not 1 through 10. That's what I think puts Aiden Hutchinson as not just the best defender, but the best player available.
I'm with you. A step down from the other edge defenders. He's my number one as well. Step down from the other edge defenders that have gone, 1, 2, 3 in past years. The Chase Youngs of the world, throw him in there. But Hutch has the quicks, the technique to play the run, to rush the passer. I think he's the best defensive player in this draft. Let us know what's your top 5. It's draft week. PFF, NFL.